G'day, it's Carl Thompson here from StorageCraft. Today we'll be talking about the StorageCraft ShadowXafe solution. This is part of our next generation portfolio of technology. So I'm just see a few more people just joining in, so I'll just give this another 30 seconds or so before I kick off. Just to let everyone know that I am recording the session today. It is just a very short and sharp 15-minute session. If you've got any questions, please type them in as we go along, and I will do a Q&A at the end, and that may go over time. So I will start with maybe just a couple of minutes and some slides just to give you a bit of background on the architecture, and then I'd like to spend most of the time driving you through a live demo so you get to experience the solution. So moving forward, basically if you consider you know, where StorageCraft has come from, early 2017, StorageCraft purchased Exablocks, which was rebranded OneBlocks for our scalar enterprise storage. And on the right-hand side, our data protection family of ShadowProtect, which has been around for well over a decade. So what we're really doing is looking at how we can combine these technologies to offer a converged solution, and this is where our OneSafe appliance fits in. But what we'll be talking about today is ShadowXafe. So ShadowXafe is our next generation of backup and disaster recovery solution. It is software only, so it's not part of any appliance. You can use this on whichever hardware you want for physical and virtual backup and disaster recovery. So the focus is on ShadowXafe today. If you were to purchase OneSafe, you can buy it just as the hardware, or you can buy the converged solution, which basically includes the ShadowXafe capability as a site license. So very much for the upper mid-market enterprise type customer. But again, today we're just going to focus on the software-only ShadowXafe solution. So for a lot of the users and customers and partners that are on this webinar, I can see there's still some people joining through now, will be familiar with our traditional ShadowProtect software. And this, I guess what I'm going to show you is actually similar across a lot of our competing sort of backup and recovery softwares. So if we take a look, you know, this is the later ShadowProtect SPX interface. We've got this recovery environment builder and the associated recovery environment. We've got a socket licensing service. We've got our image manager component and the shadow control. Now, all of these things make up the ShadowProtect solution. I mean, we just shell ShadowProtect and you get all of these components with it. And really, what we needed to do was simplify this. We needed to make it easier to deploy, easier to consume, easier to do everything. So the new dashboard here that you're seeing, this is the new ShadowXafe or OneSafe dashboard. This does everything, the backup, the recovery. This is the only user interface. There's nowhere else you go to do anything. It's all done from here, which is really cool. Some of the features that come with ShadowXafe, you'll see on the top left there, one of the big new things is host-based protection. So initially, at the moment today, we offer the ability to do VMware-based snapshotting at the host level without having to install an agent. And then obviously agent-based protection will take that to the next level. And those of you familiar with ShadowProtect will know it is absolutely the best way to back up virtual and physical servers, but sometimes people don't want to have to install an agent. They can't afford the reboot right now, or there's change control in their environment. It will take some time to actually install something. So host-based allows people to move quite quickly, and then as they see these big, large VMs, or they want that better VSS provider, consistent level backup, the agent's going to do that better. It always will, but it's not the only option. So that's really cool. With the tight integration that we have with VMware today, you've got the ability to very rapidly recover these backups. In fact, any backup directly into VMware takes less than a second. It's extremely fast, and this technology will be built out into Hyper-V around January timeframe next year is the current status that we're aiming for there. So Hyper-V, host-based, as well as protection and recovery into Hyper-V will come out in January. Again, right now it is the initial release is highly aligned with VMware. Moving into the middle here, probably my most favorite capability with ShadowXafe now is around the SLA-driven dashboard. So this is the ability to say, in one policy, I want to back up this frequent, I want to back up to this storage, I want to have this retention, and I want to replicate to these different places. And in one place with one click to save and apply it to any physical or virtual machine, that is now managing the whole life cycle of that backup and recovery journey, which is amazing. So that's you're going to see that very soon, very much simplified. And again, familiar with ShadowProtect, it was ShadowProtect for the backup, and then image manager for your attention, and then a separate image manager job to do the replication. There's all those different aspects to piece together, and we've really simplified that now, which is really cool. And really, I think what we're wanting to do is allow you guys to do some of the cool things that StorageCraft have been able to do in our cloud. It's our DR as a service offering. We've got some really cool patents around one click for entire site failover. And this type of orchestration is what's coming down now into Shadow Control. So you've actually got that power in your hands to do site recovery on-prem or in your own facility, offsite or data center. So lots of cool stuff coming into the solution. A bit of a deployment overview, just so you can get a bit of architectural understanding. Down the bottom right here is the key here, this OS, the one system. This is the central management. It gets deployed into a VM. We've got a really cool deployment tool that pushes this into a VM for you in just 5 minutes. It's a Linux appliance. Once that is deployed, that provides the web interface for managing the whole solution. And then what you may choose to do is deploy extra service nodes. These are just additional VMs that, again, the deployment tool can deploy. And what this facilitates here is primarily the VMware transport mode called HotAdd, where you may have this deployed out to additional hosts to facilitate the HotAdd, which is a very fast way to do host-based backups of virtual machines. If you can't deploy that or your infrastructure isn't able to handle HotAdd mode, it will fail over to what's called LAN mode, NDB mode with VMware. I believe that is throttled with VMware at about 30 megabits. So generally, where possible, you're going to want to take advantage of HotAdd. That we can do with this solution is very easy, leveraging this small service node VM that just simply gets deployed out to additional hosts. And then obviously outside of that is the agent. So that is totally separate. It is not part of the VMware snapshotting. We do in-guest snapshotting with the agent with very tight DSS-aware integration and across any physical or virtual environment. So that's a bit about the deployment. The key thing to see here is right now, version 1, it is targeted for an end-user customer deployment. In Q1 next year, so early next year, you know, around the same time as the Hyper-V release, maybe slightly afterwards, we'll release what's called the multi-tenant version. And what that will mean is for us or our resellers, they will to be able to simply deploy a one system in their data center, and the customers on-prem will only need the service node component to provide the communications back to the central management one system. So that architecture is well underway in our development, and it's not going to be long before that becomes a reality. But right now, the desired customer would be an on-prem environment. They're going to have their own one system running, and obviously a VMware will be a requirement. You will need VMware 5.5 or newer, ideally 6.0 update to or newer to take advantage of the virtual boot capabilities with the VIO filter. Now that does require Essentials Plus or higher. That's where the clustering license becomes available. So with VMware VIO, you do need Essentials Plus, Standard or Enterprise, which includes the clustering, and that facilitates the instant boot for VIO. However, that is not a requirement for the solution. You can, as long as you're running vCenter today, you can deploy the solution and still do backup and recovery. The cluster licensing will give you the ability for instant boot. And probably, again, early next year, we'll be releasing a version that doesn't require vCenter either. So you'll be able to deploy it directly out to the ESXi host. So there's a lot coming there. Obviously, with the agent, you know, across other physical machines or standalone ESXi hosts, as long as you can deploy the service node in one system into a vCenter server, the agent will protect those other machines as well. So one of the other architectural things here to understand is that with ShadowProtect solution, a lot of softwares, they use what's called a monolithic or layered approach, and that's where everything's wrapped into one piece of software. So if we need to update some code, we update our software, our QA has to verify everything, then it gets released and you install it, and you know, with ShadowProtect you have to reboot again. What we've now done is gone down this microservices approach, where each thing or each component is a separate microservice. And what that means is a whole lot of things. For example, when VMware release, I don't know, ESX 7.0, it'll be some API changes. We'll only have to QA and update one microservice and be able to roll it out very quickly. If you need more storage or just extend your hot add to additional hosts, that's just one microservice that we have to scale. So this solution is very scalable, and the architectural way this is done is, going to allow us to do a lot more things than we've been able to do in the past. One of the other cool things with microservices is that everything now talks over this cool new Google RPC protocol. This is a high-performance universal framework, and it does things like in-flight verification. So all microservices talk using Google RPC, all backup and recovery is done using Google RPC, all of our replication off-site is done using this protocol. So extremely fast, supports a whole ton of different programming languages, so we're able to adapt this to different hardware, different appliances, different journeys that will take us through different cloud applications and stuff. So this is a really cool, fast way that we can do rapid backup and recovery operations. Just a bit of an example here where the microservices fit in. If you take a look at ShadowProtect today, you've got the user interface, service, the APIs, the SB run, and the STC VSM. Now, the STC VSM is the low-level snapshot sector tracking driver. That's what we've retained in the ShadowXafe agent, and we've added on 2 Google RPC services. There's no user interface with this anymore. These 2 services will communicate with the service node in one system to do, all of the backup and recovery components that it needs to do. So very much scaled down now for the agent, because it's all been managed centrally, which is really cool. This talks a little bit about hyper restore, and obviously I'll take you through a demonstration of this. One of the cool things we can do with Google RPC is that not only do we have to recover from that initial backup primary storage, but we could also recover directly from the cloud or from NFS, SMB, iSCSI shares. So we've got a lot more flexible around the recovery. It does what's called intelligent I/O pattern read ahead. So as it's booting or reading things, it's reading ahead to get things ready to allow that system to recover as quick as possible. And that is a complete migration. The minute or the second that machine starts booting, we can initiate a transparent backfill, so that machine becomes a completely permanent restore. So really cool. Again, this type of capability will be coming across into a Hyper-V release very soon. This just actually shows the SPX via filter. So this came out in 2016. StorageCraft won the Gold Award at VMworld. This had the ability within 10 seconds to initiate an instant boot over SMB directly into a VMware environment, and you could recover one machine at a time through that process. Now with ShadowXafe, we can do this in just 20 milliseconds, and extending that support of SMB to now NFS, iSCSI, and wherever we can run our RPC storage services. So really cool, and it will support things like orchestration, where we have a complete site, recover a whole lot of machines at once, policy-driven type process. So that's really cool. I guess I've really cut down the slide decks today. I want to take you through a demo, just being conscious of time. So let's jump into machine here, and I'll just speed through this as quick as possible. So the first thing you'll have for your journey is basically the agent. You'll have a deployment tool ISO and a recovery agent. So the recovery agent is the bootable media to restore back to physical or different hypervisors. The deployment tool is really where you start. So basically, when you mount the deployment tool, you have what's called an executable here. And this is similar, for those of you familiar with deploying VMware's VCSA, it's a very similar type of experience. And this is really cool, and we're going to use this going forward, to incorporate Hyper-V and other types of deployments. But basically, you come through here, you choose, again, vCenter's here today, ESXi will come, Hyper-V will come, and these are the different types of places you can deploy the one system and the service nodes too. So I'll just show you the next page just to outline what that is. So basically the tool's going to go ahead and connect into my infrastructure. It's going to do a quick discovery on what my options are around deployment, and it will ask me, what do I want to do? So the very first thing with ShadowXafe is obviously deploying the one system. So that's just the simple ShadowXafe deployment here. Once you've deployed that, you may need to come back and deploy additional service nodes for extra hosts if you want that hot add capability, or as we introduce multi-tenant, this will be what goes out to your customers or remote sites. And then you may also want to push out the VIO filter for the VMware Virtual Boot Instant Restore. So basically that's the process. Obviously with ShadowXafe, It's going to ask you, host, data store, VM configuration, appliance settings. Within a couple of minutes, you can go through that, and it's going to set it all up for you, and within 5 minutes, it will be deployed and up and running. So once you have deployed it, you'll obviously get a registration page first when you go to the URL. You'll register, you'll log in, and it will look very much like this. Quite a blank dashboard. The healthy green tick is indicating that all the backup components are functional, including any registered service nodes or agents. So that's the first thing. We always will see the status of the system in the top left. And then the next key thing here is the light bulb. This flashing light bulb guides me through the 4 steps to get up and running. So very simple. In fact, what I'll do is I'm going to take you over to an already deployed system, and I'll take you through those 4 steps. But basically, just quickly here, I can see I've got 62 machines that are unprotected. It's obviously been integrated into the host. We can see all machines, regardless of whether the agent's installed or not. We can see the status of all of the machines, including one that's critical, and that will take us straight over to that machine. We can see information on usage, change rate, and data protection throughput. If you do have the OneSafe convert, you'll also see information around the storage clustering as well. But easy to see, really visible single dashboard. Jumping through that wizard, the first step it's going to ask us is around the architecture of where we want to deploy. So obviously, this is where we'll add in vCenters. This is where you'll be able to add in Hyper-V next year. And this is where it will report on any agents that are connected in here. So I've got 4 agents connected, just 3 of them have backup jobs at the moment. They're all Windows machines at the moment. But I can see here all this information. Adding a vCenter is just simply authenticating into the VMware environment. The very next step is adding in any storage or replication targets. So in here, again, we support NFS, iSCSI, SMB, and then the StorageCraft Cloud for replication. What you'll see early next year in version 2 is also the ability to replicate to a storage server. So that will be via gRPC, designed to go over the internet to your secondary remote site. So at the moment, any type of offsite replication will be done using one of these protocols over a WAN, or otherwise over to the StorageCraft Cloud. So very simple. The third step is the policies. So again, probably my most favorite piece here is adding a single policy that will include the backup frequency, the destination for those backups, what the retention is to be, and any replication. So as you add in replication or different things, you can choose if they're going to sync or just be a daily replication. And as you add these in, it will build out a bit of a protection flow. So we can see here, so as I've added in 2 replication jobs, so the local storage goes SMB and then it gets replicated to 2 locations. So very easy to build out a policy. And once you've created, and you can see I've got a couple of different policies, the 4th step is to simply apply that to any machine. So the gray machines indicate that they're currently powered off. Obviously, that's a limitation when you've got agent-only solution. You can't back up machines that aren't running. So obviously now we have the ability to select a running machine. We could select an agent where it's been installed and that's a physical server, or we could select a machine that's not even powered on at all. So there's 3 different scenarios here. We can assign a single policy to that, and they will start backing up according to that policy. So very easy, very straightforward to go through that process. I guess the next sort of step is, in terms of demonstration, is the recovery. So in here, it lists the ability to do a system recovery or a file recovery. Basically, for a system recovery, I'll go ahead and select a machine. It will list all available recovery points from every location. And I could, of course, simplify that or reduce it down to just some specific storage. Optimum will show everything and recover from the fastest place. So I'll select a backup here. The options are an instant restore the virtual boot. Again, it does require vCenter with the clustering, so Essentials Plus or higher, with 6.0 update 2 or newer, all the way up to 6.7. A full VM restore does not require clustering, so we'll simply restore the whole data before turning the VM on. And then a recovery agent requires you to have a machine booted off the recovery media. That will appear in here. I can see I've got 1 machine connected on the network, and then I can restore again from here directly to that machine. So there's no requirement for any other user interface to do any of these types of recoveries. For virtual boot, it will put in the previous machine name. It will put in here in brackets the recovery point, date and time, so you know which one you've restored. If perhaps you want to do multiple at once, you could of course delete this or put in whatever you want in here. It's found the original vCenter, host, data store, CPU and memory. So it's pre-populated all of that. Of course, I can change it to whatever I want, but this is the most logical place to recover it to. So it's saving me time by having all of that there. We won't connect the network adapter, hoping that obviously you're only testing, but of course you can, in the event of DR, bridge it straight back onto your appropriate network. You've got the option to keep the MAC address. Obviously, when I boot the server, it will have the same MAC, Windows will keep the same IP, and everything will be fully functional as it was. Power on the VM straight away. Once it's powered on, you can also initiate the migration where it will do the transparent backfill. So obviously, you could kick that off at a later time, enabling it to maybe do the backfill at the end of the day. So simply go next, and it's got a bit of a summary, and hit recover. So it really is that easy. In the background, what will happen is it's now talking to VMware over the API calls. It'll be creating the VM and going through that process. So basically, I actually can see here, it's just kicked off some replications. Let me just, sorry, I'm actually in New Zealand and it's in Aussie time, so we'll just jump over to VMware. I can see it has created the VM. It looks like something did go wrong there. Let's just go have a look. Scroll down to restore. We can have a look here. Okay, so what it's done is a storage profile recovery point already exists. So actually what's happened is I've just done the same demo previously and I've given it the same name. So if I just track back here quickly, we'll go and select that same server again. All it's basically saying is that I've already got a recovery point that had been created with this name. So we'll call this webinar 01, next, and recover. So yeah, it's pretty straightforward. All the logging's obviously there. I could very easily see the mistake that I had made there. It's going to go ahead here and create a new VM. So if I jump back over, I can actually see here it's already booting. There's that webinar 01. So it is extremely fast. The problem with me was that this machine already existed, preventing that previous recovery. So if we take a look actually here at this success, I apologize, I've got a lot of replication jobs all happening at the same time. If I click on this restore here, we can see here sitting time 11:52, 35 split seconds in the morning, and within 42 split seconds, so that's less than 10 seconds, it had initiated that virtual boot. So extremely fast process here. As you can see, that VM was created and already booted by the time I clicked over to the vCenter server. So really cool. Because I didn't initiate the migration at any time, by simply kicking off a VMware snapshot, we'll initiate the complete transparent backfill. Just tracking through quickly, I do apologize, I have gone over time. Some of the analytical reporting, the SLA compliance is probably my most favorite. So rather than just telling us the number of successful backups, it's looking at the whole SLA. So being in compliance not only means the backups are happening as frequent as I wanted, it also means that it's replicating and the appropriate retention has been met. So really great to be able to monitor based on SLA compliance rather than just the backup, because we want to know about the whole journey of the backups. We can also see storage usage across our different storage consumption and protection analysts. So this is going to give us a bit more detail, around the recovery point objectives that exist. So that's more focusing just on the backup protection, but giving us, a rating there on what that is. And just finally, going through configuration, we've talked about the environments and the storage. You've got some deployment tokens, service nodes. So basically, you've got the primary one system, and then each site will have a service leader, which is going to facilitate the backup and recovery for different sites. In the sites is basically where you can create sites. The cool thing is you can have a default policy. So if new VMs are suddenly added into the site or into a VMware environment, we can have it automatically start taking host-based backups, or you could have an agent deployed through group policy that will start backing up right away, which is really cool. And then the users and groups, which will be expanded further with our multi-tenant release, is going to provide controlled access into one system, which is really cool. So guys, I apologize, I have gone well over time. There's a lot to fit into a short demo, so I'll do my best to cut that down even further for next time. But if anyone's got any questions, feel please feel free to stay on. I'll do 5 minutes of questions. I'm happy to go back and show anything or cover off anything that I may have skipped over, but you will need to type them into the questions as everyone is on mute. So thanks again for everyone else that came along, and I will be going through. I can see there has been some questions that are just popping up now. So let me take a look. So someone's asked how it is licensed. So there's different licensing options available. You can do what's called subscription-based or perpetual-based. Obviously, subscription-based will expire after a period of time and you have to buy it again. With perpetual, you own it, and then there's just a reduced maintenance fee for additional years. In terms of the types of licensing, you can license per VM or per physical server, or you can license per socket. So, you know, there'll be a price break a bit between, you know, when it makes more sense to go socket-based rather than licensing per VM. The advantage with licensing per VM is you might have a low number of VMs per sockets, and therefore it becomes more cost-effective to license per VM, and it's regardless of which host that VM sits on. So yeah, there's different options. Please do reach out to your distributor for pricing around that. We will, for our service providers, our managed service providers will be releasing MSP pricing early next year with the multi-tenant release. Someone's asked, is the integration into HPE Store One? So at the moment, the storage that it supports is NFS, SMB, or iSCSI. So as long as you can do that from your storage, yes, we will integrate directly into that hardware, no problem at all. Someone there's mentioned definitely looking forward to Hyper-V integration. So yes, StorageCraft has, you know, particularly with ShadowProtect, has done very well in the SMB market. So we do appreciate that we have a very high percentage of Microsoft Hyper-V customers in that SMB space. We do also have a lot of mid-market and enterprise customers that came from our one-block storage. So really, you know, we've aligned with VMware with the VIO program and some of the patents we have there, but absolutely Hyper-V is very much well underway into having that release soon. So I think that's the end of our questions for today. Just having a look. Oh, someone's asked, is there plans to support Nutanix AHV? So yes, on our roadmap is obviously Hyper-V is very high priority. The next hypervisor support will be KVM, which will fall under, you know, Nutanix AHV is based on that. So yes, it is in the plans, probably realistically, probably second half of next year, I would assume. But I can't comment. I'm not the manager, and I don't have all the a lot of flexibility, the options to back up directly off site in the future and not have to have local storage, and you know, the ability for how fast that virtual boot was. At the same sort of time frame, we could do a virtual boot straight out of StorageCraft Cloud back on-prem. So very flexible now with how that works. Guys, that's the end of the questions that have come through. This has been recorded. I will make sure a copy of this recording gets emailed out to everyone. There's a couple of people that came in late, but thanks again for attending this webinar today.